So in an earlier video, I showed you where I found what I think is the high water mark of this landslide lake on the upper part of Stevens Creek here. And what I realized I could probably do with that information is try to visualize what this lake might have looked like when it was dammed up. So this is the area of the landslide down here, and the water backed up to about this area. And what I did to visualize that is I turned on the elevation contours that's overlaid on top of this multi-direction hillshade map. And right here, this is the 1,200 foot mark there. You can probably see that 1,200 foot elevation. And if we go upstream here, this is where I checked the elevation. I measured 1,236 feet down here. The closest line on this elevation contour, this is the 1,240 foot line here. Now I don't know exactly where the landslide dam was, where the water backed up, but this is kind of the high point right here. And this point here where the road goes out over this landslide deposit is about 1,236 feet. So the elevation here is the same as the elevation up here. So what I did was did a screen capture of that, and then let me show you what I came up with. So yeah, here we go. So what I did was I traced that 1,240 foot elevation contour here, and then I took it into Paint 3D and then did a transparent fill here with a light blue color. It's not a perfect fill. I had to click in a bunch of different areas. I don't know exactly how they do that fill algorithm. This whole blue area would have been full of water at one point in time. So there's a couple of things to realize here. First is this is about 1 kilometer long, about 3,000 feet roughly. Again, depending on where you pick the location of the dam. Now this lake here would probably only be this full for maybe just a short period of time, because what's going to happen is you get this landslide down here, it's going to dam up the creek, and the creek's going to start filling up with water, and the high water mark will move up, up, up. It'll keep moving upstream. It might take the better part of a year for this to fill up. And what's going to happen is if there's high water flows coming downstream, wherever that fast moving water hits the still water, that's where the sediment is going to be deposited. You have a high water flow, that's going to fill this lake up a little more. Then the high water mark will move a little higher. Another flood will come down, deposit sediment, the water level goes up, and it repeats until perhaps getting up to this elevation here. But at that point, the water level is going to be at the top of the landslide dam, and then the water will start cutting through that loose landslide debris and will start eroding down. And now the water level, it starts up here, and it's going to drop, 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 drop. And then if there's floods again, maybe the water levels drop to here and another big rain event comes in. Well, it'll dump sediment here and then dump sediment here and keep going until the creek is cut all the way back through down to its normal channel. And then at that point, there's no more sediment being deposited. The creek's just flowing through here. What you end up with is you can see here in the middle, so here's the 1,200 foot contour right here. Basically, this 1,200 foot level is roughly halfway. So you would expect most of the sediment to be deposited from below halfway to a little above halfway, because that would be where the lake level would be most of the time. So if it were filling all the way up, it would be up here, but not very long, and then it would start draining. So any floods that come down the creek would fill sediment in here. This is the Stevens Creek inflow water sensor that the Valley Water District maintains. Now this sensor is about 5 miles downstream from where the landslide is, and it's probably 2 to 3 times the flow that the portion of the creek upstream gets, because there's several major tributaries and other creeks coming in below where the landslide is. And let's see, the blue is the water height. The black line here is the actual flow. Now you can see last year there were only a couple of little blips, not even 200 cubic feet per second. So that year there probably wouldn't have been enough water coming down the creek to fill up that portion of the creek if it were dammed up. Now last year was record high rainfall, and we had many events. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 high flow events. But you can see these don't last very long. There's only a week or two that the water level's really high, and then it drops down right away. The filling of that dam is going to be very dependent on, is it a dry year or is it a wet year? Because it could take quite a while to fill. And if we go back to this picture here, just doing a rough estimate of the volume here, it's about 3,000 feet end to end, and roughly 100 feet wide. Then going by maybe an average depth of about 40 feet, you come up with something between 500 and 1,000 acre-feet of water here. And if you go over to the Valley Water page, this is the reservoir here. So here's Stevens Creek Reservoir. Oh, let's see, that's the elevation. Let me get the acre-feet. Yeah, 320 up to about 1,600. So there was maybe about 1,300 acre-feet added to the reservoir over that whole rain year. And like I said, the flow down at the reservoir is probably 2 to 3 times what it is at this point. So that would only be maybe 300 or 400 acre-feet up here. That probably wouldn't fill this lake up. But then you can see last winter, we went from like 590 up to the full pool at over 3,000 acre-feet. The last winter would have filled this thing up in a short period of time, several months. This would have filled up and then washed out. So that's why it's hard to tell how long this lake is going to last. But anyway, that's kind of a visualization of what that lake would look like. Again, this would probably only be this full for just a short period of time. So one interesting thing I've found is that if you look downstream here, here's where the landslide area is here, and then this is where it starts to open up, and there's actually quite substantial flood bars downstream here. There's a lot of debris or sediment piled up in here and on this side, and this is where the old canyon road, there's a bridge here now, but it used to be a ford. So the old road used to come up here and the wagons would just go across the creek here, because this was all sediment in here, probably deposited by the landslide dam getting washed out, and then you would have a somewhat of a flood event down here. All that sediment from up here would get moved down. And so there's quite a bit of sediment in this part of the canyon here, but it's more like flood bars up on the side. And then the farther down the creek you get, deeper the canyon is, without all that sediment. Yeah, so hopefully this little sketch that I made kind of helps to visualize what that lake might have looked like at one point in time. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions, post up in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.